We're going to start the final hour of the show talking with our good friend Ian Furness, the Furness, formerly of the Fan, up there killing it and has for some time now at 93.3 KJR. Find him on Twitter at Ian KJR Fox. He joins us now. Ian, good morning. Thanks for hopping on with us. How you doing?
Good, Brandon. How are you? And congrats to Dirt, by the way, as well. I know he's not there, but pass along that. So good to be on with you this morning.
Yeah, no, he's doing great. He'll be back in just a couple weeks. I know he's antsy in his pantsy to get back and give all the hot takes out there. There's a lot to talk about. And, I don't know why. Maybe it's because I interned at the station up there years ago and I got to work with you a little bit. But when college football keeps puking up all over itself and doing dumb things, I kind of think of you. You're a Washington State guy, but you've been covering major college football for a long time. So, if we even remove ties to any affiliation of a university, what's just your read on the way college football is going about its business right now?
It's moronic, I guess would be the best way to put it. A few are running it for the masses, and I hate that. I just grew up I grew up in Seattle. I went to games as a Husky fan, and went to Wazoo and learned to hate Washington in a second. But also, worked in Salt Lake for many years and covered BYU and Utah before moving to Portland and covering Oregon State. And I love college football, and what's going on right now and on so many levels is just so disappointing. And I think we've passed the point of no return, at least right now. But there always seems to be a reset, and I'm just kind of waiting to see what that next reset is because, I'm sure we're going to talk college football playoff. The road they're going down right now feels like the WWE. It's predetermined who's going to be in, the championship and the playoff. Okay, these are the guys in the Royal Rumble. Super. How did they earn their way there? Well, it was scripted. Well, that's kind of what we're looking at right now.
Yeah, they said the 14-team playoff, and then they list out all the reporters. It's 3 automatics for the SEC and the Big Ten, and they run it down, and they get to the end and say, and then it's the 3 highest ranked after that. And I'm just like, yeah, you don't think that's going to be SEC and Big Ten teams too somehow? Like they're going to talk themselves or vote these teams that have 3 or 4 losses that high to get even more, so it's not looked at as an automatic qualifier. But in a weird way, it is, because I think teams like Oregon State, Washington State, pseudo Mountain West teams right now, they can have great years, but their conference schedule is going to be knocked against them. And I don't know, man, despite what the reporting is, it still feels like they're going to get even more automatic qualifiers, even if they're not labeling it that.
Well, it's the 3-3-2-2-1-1 plan, right? 1-1-1 plan, which is three, it's going to be this. It is this. It's 3 SEC teams are guaranteed in. Mm-hmm. 3 Big Ten teams are guaranteed in, 2 each from the ACC, and what's left of the Big 12. I guess what's left of it is the addition of Utah, I guess, could help them because 2 of the top 3 teams from the Big 12 from last year and every year, Texas and Oklahoma, aren't there anymore. At some point, the ACC is going to lose Clemson, Florida State, and others. But when you predetermine that those conferences are getting teams in, and I think what people fail to realize, it narrows it down even more. If you just look at, say, the Big Ten, for example, Brendan, just look at the Big Ten. Who really is a player? Who really has does Minnesota, do Minnesota, Illinois, Purdue, Nebraska, Indiana, Rutgers, Maryland, none of those teams are ever involved. They're just afterthoughts. They're just there to let other teams, the top guys rack up wins. If we go down and if you look at the SEC, for example, why Vanderbilt, South Carolina? When was the last time South Carolina was good? Mm-hmm. Arkansas, teams like that. They have no bit. Mississippi State was 1-7 last season in conference. Arkansas was 1-7 last season. Vanderbilt's they were 2-10 and 0-8 in conference, and yet they still technically get a piece of the pie and they're part of it. Again, somebody explain to me how this makes sense, how it's good for college football. It's the complete opposite, and I know it's run by different entities, and let's remember that. The NCAA doesn't run the college football playoff. The college football playoff committee does, which is basically the haves who are taking it all and just using the have-nots for, to gain wins and money and help themselves along the way. But, it's March, man. The music's playing. Da-da-da-da-da. It's all playing right now. We're March Madness, and every team, all 362 teams that play Division I basketball, even Swag's Portland Pilots, sort of, have a chance. Have a chance to get to the NCAA tournament. Everybody has a chance to get there. College football doesn't award that. So what have we really accomplished by going down this road outside of the fact that there's more money involved and the big schools get more money?
Yeah, here's the teams in the SEC, just using the final standings and rankings. Georgia, Missouri, Tennessee in the East, and then in the West you had Bama, Ole Miss. Those were 2 top 10 teams, and LSU was right on that 12 line. So like
Right.
they have 6 they can point at now and say all of these teams are worthy, even if, to your point, a lot of them aren't, because, well, they're kind of doing the college basketball thing without having the right, I think, idea of how to do this. To your point, moronic, idiotic, just they feel leaderless is what it really feels like. I know Sankey thinks he's probably the big power guy. Petiti steps in here, kind of thinks the same thing of himself. But it's just a rudderless ship that keeps drifting, I think, the wrong way. Even if your team was one of the teams that gets relocated into a conference, a major conference, I still hear from Duck fan or random Husky fan, just, this isn't what college football is to me. And yet we continue down the wrong path of all this crap, man.
Well, I mean, we've already blown up, any kind of geography. I think look at the stupidity that's involved with the 2 allegedly smartest schools in the world, Cal and Stanford, and they're now going to play in the Atlantic Coast Conference as teams located on the Pacific Coast and the Pacific time zone.
For no money. For no money.
No money. Well, Washington and Oregon are playing for relatively no money. They're paying for the same amount of money they made in the Pac-12 this year.
Yeah.
One of those 2 teams and schools can probably afford it. That would be the one in Eugene. The other one can't. And, and just, we're not even getting into the Olympic sports and all those other things, but yeah, it's disappointing. I think, as they talk about going from 12, we haven't had a 12-team playoff yet. We're already talking about going 14, 16. And what good is that going to do? That just, what that means? That means that Tennessee will get in because they would have been the next team up in the SEC. They were ranked 17th in the country last season. So, a Tennessee team that was 500 in conference at 4-4, I guess they deserve to get in, right? Penn State, they would have got in. We saw what Penn State was doing against good teams last season. Not much. Iowa would get in. They couldn't score more than, 5 points in a game, a safety and a field goal. That was their offense. So, those are the teams we're looking at. And obviously, our schools with Oregon State and Washington State are on the outside looking in. Even if they were to go, long shot into the Big 12 at some point, I don't know. What good does that do? I mean, it'd be good for football. Those teams could compete in football. Basketball-wise, it'd just be an absolute bloodletting. I mean, it's what's going to happen to Washington. Can you imagine Washington, by the way, playing Big Ten basketball next year?
No, I can't.
I mean, I'll enjoy it. It'll be fun watching them getting their chiclets knocked down their throats. But it's the whole thing's goofy. It's frustrating. But I think I would just say, and when people, I talk to and fans are frustrated when they call in or what have you, I think we'll see a reset. We've seen a reset over and over again. And things change and they'll change again. Because someone won't be happy somewhere that actually matters or has some juice and it'll get to that point. But I just go back to the football wise, just look at the Big Ten and look at the SEC and understand how many schools in those 2 conferences. It's the same, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Alabama, Georgia, Auburn. We're going to see the same teams every single year. And it's just, and that's why we try to get away from the 2-team playoff because, it was the same 2 teams every single year. LSU, really, Georgia, LSU, Auburn, Alabama. Who am I missing in that conference? Tennessee maybe can compete every now and then, but really
Florida randomly, it just depends on who the coach is,
And I always forget about realignment. Texas will be there too, and Texas, okay, and Texas. So you can take probably 12 teams across the country and say, with a couple of exceptions, those 12 teams are going to be in it every year, and we'll add 1 or 2 spots along the way. And is that a playoff? No. Really, a 12-team playoff, you can make an argument isn't a playoff. It's better than 2. But really it isn't because you haven't opened it up. There's 136 Division I college football teams in the country. Basically 70 to 80, actually more than that, probably 80 of those teams aren't even involved. So I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me, but it's where we're going. We got other issues in college athletics. But this one makes no sense.
Ian Furness, 93.3 KJR, our guest here. Give him a follow on Twitter @IanKJR Fox. Just kind of talking a hodgepodge of things. Seahawks on the clock at 16. I know they picked up the Geno part of the contract. We had Brady Henderson on a couple weeks ago. He's not convinced that means Geno's going to be the quarterback of this team quite yet. 16 on a range of mocks is anything. It could be a quarterback, could be an offensive lineman. I know a lot of Seahawks fans we've heard from. It's like pass rush, defensive lineman would be huge. Where are you at? Did you follow the combine stuff this week? Maybe not watch. Did you follow it? Do you watch? And where do you think the Seahawks are at right now on the clock at 16?
Well, I didn't watch much. Don't care. Care about the draft. It's awesome. It's all we talk. We'll talk about that 24/7. Up here in the next little while. But game tape matters. How fast you run. I think it matters. Like the splits for the linemen matter. What are the 10-yard splits? What the cone drills look like? That stuff matters for linemen. You want, especially on defensive linemen, you want guys that that have some explosiveness and have some twitch and certainly that comes into play. And I think for the offensive linemen, same thing, like the 10-yard splits and the cones, those, that kind of stuff matters. But I don't put, with Seattle, I'm kind of with Brady, who I respect tremendously. I would never speak in definitive terms with what they're going to do because I've covered these drafts since 2010 with Pete and John, and now it's just John. We don't know what John Schneider's going to do in a draft. I think we all understand that he was the personnel guy. He was the chief scout. He was the guy in charge, of finding all the information. But there's no doubt Pete made the final call. That was evident when when John said, "Hey, 14 years we've been here. We've only taken 2 quarterbacks. It's not something I'm proud of." Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to read between the lines there, right? He's saying that Pete overruled them all over and over again. Mm-hmm. This team's never, under Pete Carroll, they never had 3 quarterbacks on the roster, on the active roster, unless it was an emergency. And so I think that they're going to draft a quarterback. I don't think they'll draft one. This is just a guess. I don't think they'll draft a quarterback at 16. If Nix or Penix are there, one or both, I don't think they will. I think they need to have other help. I always kind of err on the side of Schneider moving down, and they don't have a second-round pick. I think the most likely scenario is, unless there's a guy that can play in the middle of the offensive line or can play in the middle of the defensive line or set an edge and have an edge rush, because that's the only guy they have that did that was Nuosu, and he was hurt. But I think if that guy's there, maybe they use 16. But I think, honestly, Brennan, I think they take 16, move down a little bit, acquire a second-round pick, a later first-round pick, and go with linemen. They are in dire need of linemen. You can win with Geno. I don't know your thought. Geno Smith's better than Brock Purdy. And Brock Purdy was one play away from winning a Super Bowl. If you put other pieces around, you can win. You can win a Super Bowl. Nick Foles won one. It's Geno's fine. Geno's arm talent's fine. He's not your long-term solution. There's a chance you can trade him. Trading him becomes easier with what they've done with the contract, with the 2 moves. But I think Geno and Drew Lock somehow, some way are going to be the 2 quarterbacks on the roster, and then maybe a developmental guy they get middle of the rounds, and then they go elsewhere to try to fill in the gaps on the line of scrimmage, which they were woeful at last year.
I'll get you out of here with this, Ian, because I appreciate the time. The Mariners, how good are the Mariners going to be this year?
Well, 1 through 5, they're great. That would be their starting rotation, and sounds like Matt Brash is going to be okay. That helps the bullpen, but even without Brash, their bullpen's elite. They can pitch. Every game they're going to have a chance to win because their pitching's great. Their number 3 starter is Logan Gilbert. He'd be a number 1 for most teams. And, and Wu and Miller, the young guys in the back end, now they've got a year under their belts. They're really good. They can absolutely, they're just loaded pitching wise. And the question is, can they hit? They've got some guys in the middle. Julio's as good as there is in the league. If Polanco stays, well, here's the big if. Capital letters. If Polanco stays healthy. If Mitch Garver stays healthy, an actual DH that, wait for it, a designated hitter who can hit. New policy for Seattle. Brand new policy. If Garver's healthy, if Haniger's healthy. Those guys, none of them have been healthy in the last few years. But if those guys are healthy, they're pretty good. And they will be pretty good offensively. The fact they don't have a third baseman is troublesome. Corner outfield, left field is still up in the air. Mm-hmm. Right field's Haniger, but is Haniger, how many games can he give you when he hasn't been healthy for a couple of years? There's a lot of question marks in terms of the position players and the lineup. But if capital, all IF. If they're healthy offensively, they should be good. Cal Raleigh's elite. I'm just an elite catcher on every level, both defensively, receiving, handling a staff, and he's one of the best hitting catchers in baseball. So they've got a lot of pieces. They also have some question marks, and most of those question marks we have no idea because it's all based on can guys stay healthy along the way. And if they are, they'll be pretty good. I mean, they'll be competitive. They might be really good. Or, like always, they might start out slow. We'll turn on them quickly, and then they'll try to rally, and they'll fall a game or two short. And the GM, well, I guess he's not the GM anymore, Depoto, he'll give us some nonsense at the end of the year and give us percentages and analytics that make no sense and piss everybody off. And we'll have the same conversation a year from now because they are the Mariners.
Couldn't tell if you're talking about the Blazers or the Mariners there with how they start. We bury them, and then they push late, and they give you a little hope, and then they finish just short of it. But you also inspired a good poll question. Who is the better quarterback to you, Geno Smith or Brock Purdy? We'll post that on the Twitter account. Ian, we always appreciate the time. It's great to catch up with you. We'll have to catch up with you again when Dirt gets back in just a couple weeks, and maybe closer to the draft. Your kind of feels of the draft with the Seahawks lie. Enjoy the start of Mariners baseball, and thanks for hopping on with us this morning.
I'll come on with you guys anytime, man. Take care. Talk to you soon, Brendan. Thanks.
Yeah, there we go. Good stuff from the Furness, a good friend in the industry on Twitter, @IanKJR.